Hi, I've been making bread now in a gluten-free kitchen for a few years. My wife is very sensitive to gluten and I am gluten intolerant. I used to make bread in the regular way and it took me a while to find different ways to make gluten-free bread. What I have here is the very last of the loaf that I made most recently, which is why I'm going to make another one now. As you can see, it looks a little bit like proper bread. It slices beautifully. You can cut it as thin as you like. It'll make sandwiches or you can toast it. It really is the best recipe I've come up with so far. Now, what I've done is I've taken buckwheat that I buy at Tesco's. I know some people say it's not gluten-free, but we've had absolutely no reaction to it and have been using it for quite a while. And I have soaked 300 grams in water. 8 hours is enough. This has been there a shade longer because I didn't get a chance to get to it before. And now I'm going to drain the water off it, just using a sieve. I don't care if there's a little bit of water left in, it's really not an issue. Just let the water drain away. You may have guessed I'm not a very proficient video maker, so I'm just letting the water dribble out of the bottom of the sieve now. And there it is, back in the sieve. Now I'm going to transfer it to a slightly bigger bowl because I want to mix it and I don't want it splashing everywhere. So I've now got 300 grams of soaked buckwheat in this bowl, and I'm going to add to it about 200 grams of water. When I say about, sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, depending on the consistency that I arrive at. So I've got 300 in this jug, and I'm going to pour just under 200 into there. That's about 200 now. And I'm going to add to that scale. I'm going to add to it 50 grams of buckwheat flour. I use Dove's buckwheat flour. 50 grams. So I zero the scale and just tip in 50 grams. There's a little bit more there, 75 grams. So I'll adjust how much of the next flour I'm going to use, which is just plain gluten-free flour from Dove's. I want to add in total about 200 grams of flour, so I'll just take this up to 200. I'm not a terrific stickler for precise amounts. I'm now going to take psyllium husk powder. I'm going to put 1 teaspoon into there. This allows the bread to, it's a gluten substitute if you like. It just gives body to the bread. Opening the packet can be a bit tricky. Right. So I'll take a teaspoon of that, a slightly large teaspoon, slightly heaped teaspoon. And then I'm going to take a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt. Again, a generous teaspoon of salt. And I'm also going to take just easy bake yeast. You could use any kind of yeast you like. I'm going to put 2 teaspoons into that. And in order to help the yeast to grow, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of sugar. I tend to use Demerara, it's the only sugar we have in the house. And that's just to help the yeast. And then I'm going to take this blender masher here, and I'm going to blend the whole lot together. First I'm just going to mix in the liquid, just so that I don't end up with flour flying everywhere. Sometimes I mash the granules before I add the other flour. I've had perfectly good results doing either. Sometimes I forget that I've mixed it all together, and then I just blend it anyway. So this will be a touch noisy, so I will pause the video just so that you know what I'm doing. So now I've blitzed the grains together with the flour mixture. If I add the flour afterwards, I just stir it in, and then I use a mixer with a dough hook anyway for 2 or 3 minutes, just to make sure everything's well combined. And that's all in there now. Then I take my mixer with dough hooks, and I'll just unplug it here. And plug in this, and now I'm going to mix it for about 2 or 3 minutes, just letting it run through. Now, because I like a seeded bread, I tend to use pumpkin seeds, and I put about 50 grams in roughly. I just take a little handful like that and drop them in, and then I mix that again, just using a spatula. And the seeds slice up when you're slicing the bread. Very nice it is. Occasionally I'll put some herbs or other flavorings in, but to tell you the truth, the buckwheat itself is so naturally nutty and delicious that I don't think it's particularly necessary. Now I have a kind of a very heavy batter, which I'll just leave there for the moment. And this is a very neat trick. I'm going to line my baking tin with parchment paper. I was taught this by a lady in Greece, a friend in Greece. You just soak the paper. You may already know this trick. Soak the paper, squeeze the water out, and then you can just easily line your pan. And there it is, done. That's it. Then I take my mixture and I pour it into the pan. So don't forget, this starts it off with 500 grams of flour mixture, plus the salt and the yeast and so on. And it makes a very nice loaf, which we keep in the fridge and just slice up as we need it. And the last loaf lasted us a full week. When I'm getting near the end, I just take more buckwheat, put it in a pan, leave it to soak on the counter, and get ready for the next one. So now that my dough is in there, I just shake the pan to even it out a bit, and there it is. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is just take if I didn't have this, I'd use a brush. And I'm just going to squirt, this is sunflower oil, I could use olive oil, any other oil that happens to be handy. Just a squirt on the top, or a brushing on the top, And then I love toasted sesame seeds. These are raw sesame seeds. And I just sprinkle them on there, and of course they toast during the baking. What the oil does is it gives you a beautiful golden crust, and that's it. My loaf is ready now to cover. I leave it for about an hour. It doesn't necessarily rise a huge amount. I leave it for about an hour, and then I'm going to bake it at 180 degrees or gas mark 4 for about an hour. So that's what it looks like now. It has probably risen somewhat, maybe certainly not doubled in size, maybe a quarter to a third of an increase. And the last thing I'm going to do before I put it in the preheated oven is I'm just going to make a slash down the middle. I started doing this because I realized that the crust was always breaking up in lots of different areas, which made it difficult to cut. So there it is, into my oven, and it'll stay there now for an hour, and it should be just about bang on. I'm just setting a timer. There it is. Let's check it's all right. Right, so I'll see you in an hour. Well, that's it. It's an hour gone by. Time to take it out of the oven and see what we have. The smell of this is absolutely delightful. It's filled the whole house. That's a very fine looking loaf of bread. So I'll just take it by the paper and lift it out of the tin. And there it is, a very handsome loaf of bread, if I do say so. It's very nice all the way around. You can see from the oil on the top how it's browned it lovely, and it'll sit on a cooling rack. Tomorrow that'll be perfectly good for slicing up and eating. So that's it, gluten-free buckwheat bread. Makes delicious toast and doesn't fall apart when you make sandwiches with it. Highly recommended. Bye-bye.